Yeah.
All right. Welcome to another edition of Shabbat Lounge. This is Matt.
And Jake here.
Jake, happy Father's Day.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm a father.
I'm a father.
Hey,
You're a father.
we're all fathers.
Maybe not.
So if you're a father, happy Father's Day.
That's right. That's a big shout out to all the Father's Day and fathers today. We hope that you're having a great day. And we plan on presenting this on Shabbat. And so hopefully you're watching that, and we'll try to be in the chat. And so we think Father's Day is pretty important.
That's right. It's important to be a father, important to have a father.
That's right. And we're very thankful for our Heavenly Father, who sets the greatest example of them all. But we want to thank you for being here. Please like, subscribe, share. You know, sometimes I'm like, do you subscribe? Because on some social media platforms, TikTok, for instance, I see more people when I don't subscribe to them. I don't understand how this works. But anyway. Maybe if you know how this works, please let me know.
I think to trick the algorithm to support the channel, you subscribe to the channel. I don't know if that helps you out. It would help the channel out.
Yes, we think so. So we're told we're supposed to say things like that. And so, yeah, that's what we do.
At the big meeting, they told us that. So,
yes, the big meeting. I'm going to adjust this mic a little bit. All right, so we've got some parenting rules. This is we're going to Jake and I both have a set of rules that we have been talking about. So we're going to kind of go through some of these and share them with you. This is something that I gave to my oldest son when he had his first child. Gave him some pro tips. I think I gave it to him way before he was ready. And he didn't even know all the things, you know. He didn't even have an idea, you know. When they're babies, you don't know what you're doing, especially your first time baby. You're like, okay, and it's like anything in life. You do it once, and you're like, okay, I kind of think I know how this works now. And then the second one comes along, and it's completely different.
Right.
But if you find yourself angry, it's best to wait before you speak and act. And I think that's good advice. I definitely think it's advice that I have violated before, and usually doesn't work out well.
Yeah, I think this goes along with being a righteous judge. You kind of don't let your emotions do the judging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this applies to more than just
kids.
Managing your children, but in a workplace you may manage workers, or if you don't manage them, you have to work with them. And this is good advice. If you go right off to being angry, I mean, usually both parties escalate quickly and things just go south.
I think they call that a toxic work environment.
Yes, I think they do. I've been there, done that. I've worked with people like that. So, and
have you been that?
No, I hope not.
I hope not.
I hope I have.
I wouldn't say I was. So. Don't ask Larry.
Yeah. So, and let them see you study the word and pray and read the word to them every day. So I think that's super important. I was intentional. I wanted my children in the mornings to get up and see that I was sitting at the kitchen table, had the Bible open, and I was reading. And this was when I was not a Torah person. And but I felt like that was very important for them to see me doing those things. And I'm a firm believer in that. And also something very important is learning the difference between willful disobedience and childlike behavior. So some people have a hard time with that, but kids are kids. They're going to spill things. They're going to break things. They're just going to do dumb stuff. They might even accidentally whack their sister or their brother with a big stick. and
Been there.
truly not even mean to knock them out cold, but they might. But there are times when they pick up the stick and they've got hate in their eyes and they're going for blood. And you do have to learn the difference between those two things. And so one of them is normal and one of them is punishable. And you got to learn the difference between the two.
I think I did apologize for the stitches that came about because of the stick.
No, that's good.
So
that's good. Yeah. Sticks do hurt. They do break bones. Yeah. And there must be consequences for willful disobedience. And it starts really when they're young, and something has to happen, and, old school says you got to spank them, I don't necessarily think that it has to be that every time. Sometimes things like that are appropriate, and then other times it's not. And I think each child is different, but there should be, the deal is there's got to be something that happens that they don't like, rather swiftly.
First, you give them a nice toy, and then you smash it. No, that's good advice that you give on, sometimes, like in our case, we had specific instances of if you do XYZ, that results in a spanking. Otherwise, we don't think it rises to that occasion. And again, the point about it depends on the child. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Some kids will get that message through a spanking. Some will not. Mm-hmm. And I think you need to look to the Torah talks about not breaking your son's spirit during correction. I think you got to see where that line is.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's good. And sometimes the younger one looks at what's happening to, one of the older ones and goes like, oh, note to self, don't do that. Yeah. That looks terrible. And so a lot of times, either the youngest figures out how to be sneakier and not get caught, or they choose different things. So, and be consistent. And so, whatever it is you decide to do, be consistent with it. I learned this teaching that you have this concept that sometimes you think you got to do this big, terrible punishment. And if you do everything as this big, terrible punishment, when something really bad happens, there's what do you do?
Nothing left to do.
You already did the big thing. So you got to have these little things so that when there is this big thing, and you got to decide what your big rocks are, so to speak. What are your immovable objects that this is rock solid? For most parents, it should be things like lying to you and not stopping when you have spoken a command, stop, because that's so important for their safety. Because if they are running out of your house and they don't believe you and they don't listen to you and they're just like, this is fun, Dad chases me.
That's how you get hit by a car.
Yes. Yeah, bad. So they've got to know you mean what you say,
right?
And you got to be consistent.
That's how you get hit by a car while pulling a little red wagon, right, Mom?
Oh, so sounds personal.
It is.
Sabbath Lounge gets personal. And take the lead in discipline. I believe the man should take on that role and take on that leadership aspect. But that also doesn't mean that you shouldn't listen to your wife, because y'all put us together for a reason. And you see in Scripture over and over and over, there were many men who listened to their wives. Sometimes it didn't work out well. Sometimes it was good advice. But wise men do listen to the perspective of their wife. And, because sometimes you do need to chill out a little bit because you're a little hot. Maybe you need to back off a little bit and think about what you're doing here.
Yeah. And I think this is kind of, for us, it was kind of age related as well. Like early on, the punishment needs to come quickly because they'll associate that with the action.
Yeah. They don't get it if it's like a week later.
Right. Later, like as my kids are growing older, it's like, well, you can wait for your dad to get home to punish you on this. because you'll understand that
Hmm.
that's what it's for. When they're like real little, you don't really have that with them.
Yeah, no. And so at a certain age when they're older, it actually is pretty effective because they're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So they got all
They're
day to
dreading
think
it the
about
whole
that.
day.
So,
Right.
and that's powerful too. Make sure you love on them after discipline. I always felt like that was important, that they understood that no matter what, I still love them. I am their father, and I'm proud of them, and I do love them. And I think that touch is important. Some men are, they're afraid of touching their children or hugging their children. And
Like it'll make them look weak or something.
Yeah. And it does.
Real men hug.
That's right. And it does change, when you have teenagers, sometimes, I hit them on the arm or something. I mean, it's still physical touch, and it shows them that they are okay and their body's okay. And it's, there's a lot of psychological things that go when fathers, do have that kind of contact with their child. It's very beneficial with their growth, their development, and their self-confidence. I just have read a lot of research the last few years about how, when a father has a child, especially when they get 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, we have a tendency to be playful. We mess around. And so the natural thing to do is we'd like to pick them up and throw them and stuff and wrestle with them and throw them on the ground and roughhouse them and just kind of get crazy. And I think every man has that in him, and kids love it. And it turns out they're hardwired for this interaction with their dad. And children that have that kind of interaction with their dad are more stable, more successful, more confident in who they are. There's something about that builds confidence and trust in the child. And so anyway, fact check me on that, but I think it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
Get your bluff in on them early. Firm believer of that. Years and years ago, and I wrote about this in my book, Becoming Jacob. My friend David Bedford was a school teacher. I think he became a principal, probably still is a principal today. And he was my age, but he really had a good handle on this. And I think it came from his father or his grandfather. Somebody in his family basically told him this. If you didn't have them by the time they were 7 or 8, it's probably too late. Because they needed to understand at an early age that you meant what you said, and there was an enforcement behind it. And I think that's really good advice. I've seen parents that didn't do that, and they wait till they're teenagers, and that's a problem.
Yeah, it's not that it's too late, but it's too late. It's, it's harder. It's much harder to break that habit that you've let grow.
Definitely ugly at that age, So, the 2-year-old was one thing when they throw a fit, and kind of funny sometimes what they do. But when it's 13, 14, 15, 20,
right,
it's ugly.
Can you go back one?
Mm-hmm.
There's something I wanted to say and I forgot, but I remembered. Okay. So normie Christian church always has like a men's retreat or man camp, something like that, where you go out and shoot guns and hang out and talk about what's important, disciple and things like that. So one of them, I went to a few of those, and one on this topic was very influential to me because this guy, he was talking about, he was a missionary. I can't remember his name, but I can picture him. And he was talking about this exact topic of after discipline, his father he lived on a farm, and he had like a stump out in the woods. This is where they would do their discipline. And he would go be with his son, explain to him the correction, give a discipline, and then he'd love on him after that. And they'd pray together. And it was just the way he talked about it and the way he kind of showed how that process walked out, I loved. And I do something very similar with my kids. And so I think I just wanted to include that in this part because it was pretty influential to me.
Yeah, no, that's that's important, and it's also not coddling them either, because they're gonna cry, they're gonna be upset, and I didn't try to console them, but I just made sure they knew where they stood, and it's a whole deal of the old thing of bank account of good feelings. So everybody's got this emotional bank account with each other, and you just want to have more deposits in them than withdrawals. And if all you're doing is negative and never give any positive, that's not healthy, and you will raise a messed up person. And so unfortunately, what happens with a lot of people, and I would challenge you, if you're listening to this and you're one of the, and you have this messed up background and your parents were terrible, you need to make sure you get yourself together and that you are right in your head and that you have, you've got that figured out. Because if not, you will pass on the sins of your father right on to the next generation. And they will do the same thing and have the same problems you had because you didn't figure it out. And so, it's up to us to break these generational curses. Some of them, we have to have help with, but we ultimately it comes back to that concept that we see so many times with the people in the Israelites as they come into the land. They're supposed to take possession of the land, and we have to take possession of our minds and our hearts and own those things. And we cannot expect our children to take possession of their own minds and their own hearts if we ourselves are a mess and a wreck. And that goes for moms and dads. If you don't deal with the emotional baggage of the past, and so many of us have abandonment issues. Our parents may have done crazy things, left us, done all this stuff 30, 40 years ago and 20 years ago, and you hang on to that and you don't get better. Well, guess what? You're going to pass every bit of that on to your child. And so it is so important to correct that within yourself when you're raising children. So anyway.
Yeah. And the hard part is you might not recognize it until it's too late.
Yeah.
That you've passed that on.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I did used to tease my children all the time and be like, years of therapy, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
So I didn't really mean that though. You got to shield them from the world and its voices, because the world, is screaming at the top of its lungs, in their face, and in their head. And don't let the world win. If you don't pay attention to what they watch, what they see, what they listen to, you're in trouble, because the world will certainly give them what they want to see and hear and do. They will fill up their minds. So, but us, especially as fathers, sometimes fathers are like, I'm the provider and I do this, and they got food and water and clothes and
the end.
Yeah. And they, and that's part of it. But that is actually not is it the most important part? You don't let your children starve. But for most people in America today, they take this to mean, they have the best game systems, all the devices and every sporting team. That's how providing in a lot of fathers' minds can be taken. But it's so much, that's a piece of it. But really the spiritual piece should be so much more larger, because things are going to come and go ultimately. And but what you do as a warrior, a prayer warrior, a protector for your child, that is just there's no value or price that you can put on that.
So why don't you talk a little bit about how because I think a lot of people will see this and say shield them from the world and its vices, and then they'll see helicopter parent, and they'll say, oh, well, they never see anything difficult. They never see anything that they'll have to deal with in the real world. So kind of talk a little bit about how, there are things to shield from and things like ways and times to introduce things.
Well, the other thing is when we're raising children, you're looking at it wrong. I'm going to tell you right now, you're looking at it wrong if you think you're raising boys and girls. That's incorrect. You are not raising boys and girls. You're raising men and women, and you must treat it that way. And you must understand that you are raising up men and women. And what I pray for and what I hope is that my children, now they're all grown, but that they will rise up and be independent, free-thinking men and women with their own faith that they choose, not because I chose it, not because their grandparents chose it or their mom chose it, but it's the faith that they're choosing to walk out in. And, and that's a hard, scary prayer because they might not look like yours.
Right.
But if they're genuine and they're passionate about their faith, if they disagree with me, I can be fine with that if they're passionate, and even if they are slightly different. I have no tolerance if they don't have their own faith and develop it. So, but I don't think I answered your question fully.
So yeah, that's okay. Basically, how do you run into new things they're actually going to run into in the world? And I think one of the things,
one thing I would say before I forget is, in my family, poverty, growing up poor, is one of the best things that can happen. And so I know that a lot of you that could be listening to this, you're raising young children right now, and you may not have much money. You may be struggling for ends to meet. That's okay. That's okay. It's not gonna, it's not the best thing necessarily that you want to experience, but in the end, it can be a good thing because if the children that grow up with good values raised poor versus children that grow up rich, there's different hurdles that they have to overcome for sure. But when your children grow up poor and you make them earn things, they understand the value of money. They understand that life is difficult, that things don't just happen for them, and they've got to work for it and own it a little bit. And so I think adversity is part of how I would answer that question is, we're raising men, we're raising women, and life isn't going to be easy. And when you shield them from the world, you're not shielding them from problems. You are equipping them and giving them the tools to solve those problems. And that's what we're supposed to do and so sometimes you back off and you let them fail. You let them fall down. You might let a boy do some stupid decision and he might get hurt or, and that's kind of contrary to the way the world looks at all that today. But, sometimes you don't get it till you build the dumb ramp that fails and you go head over on your bicycle front end. But you do that once and you're like, okay, I'm not doing that again. You got some scratches on you or something, but yeah, we, especially boys, learn lessons the hard way.
Yeah. And I think just one other thing on that is, in terms of shielding them from things like you don't have to go show them that, hey, there's a prostitute on the corner over there. You know what I mean? All that kind of stuff they get in the proper context just reading the Bible. Yeah. Because it's a rated R faith. If you've read the Bible, then you know that. So all things like that, they'll pick up just from reading the Bible, and they'll pick it up the way it's meant to be picked up instead of the way the world wants to inject it into you.
Mm-hmm. And twist it.
Right.
And tell you, oh, this is not that big of a deal.
Right.
The enemy's coming after your family hard. You have to have your head on a swivel. The enemy wants to bring your family down. And this is absolutely true. The father is the linchpin. All the research says that when you look at families and you look at the faith of the family, the woman, if you have a family and the woman is the spiritual leader, and no offense to mom, no offense to single mothers out there, anything like that, but the proper order of things and the way Yah built it into us, when our father has a faith, we are so much more likely to continue that faith. Whereas if the mother has the faith and the father doesn't, they kind of go, eh. And, so many times, and they might do it to make the mom happy in certain times a year. But unfortunately for so many people, there's a direct correlation between the father's faith and his level of engagement with that faith, I guess, and his I don't know, his practicing of the faith, his doing of the faith. And the more he's into it, the more the kid's going to be into it. I mean, there's just a direct correlation.
Right. And there's a lot of studies that show that to be true also. This might be a good time to bring up the Hallmark thing.
Oh, yeah. So, you may have heard the story before, and I've told it many times before, back when I was doing church Father's Day specials. And we always told the story about the Hallmark greeting card. Supposedly, they would, they went into prisons with their cards, and they did something for Mother's Day, and, because that comes first. And they had huge success. Got lines at the table. Every prisoner's coming up there, and they're sending cards to mom, to grandma, to every female in their life, to their aunts, their, all kinds of people. And they're super excited. And Hallmark was like, wow, that went really well. Let's do it again. We'll do it again on Father's Day. And so Father's Day rolls around. They got all the same cards, same people, except it's Father's Day cards, but they got all the same stuff set up, same idea. And it's like crickets. Nobody shows up. And, and so that's one of those indicators that, the people in prison, there is a direct correlation between prison life and not having a dad. Yeah.
A father that takes an active role in his child's life.
Yeah. And so I did research that story a little bit, and nobody knows the origin, nobody can cite it. So could it be made up? Yes. Does it seem plausible? Yes, it's very plausible.
Yeah. But whether it is or not, the statistical breakdown of people in prison to fatherlessness is like a 1-to-1. It lines up pretty well.
Yeah. You got to have discernment of who comes in your home. Be careful who you let in your home and the things they say, and and that includes, even when you're working on a project, if you bring some riffraff around to help you and they've got foul mouths and, it's a direct reflection somewhat of you, and what you'll put up with, I guess. And so you just got to be concerning. And also it's discernment of spirits, because some people can come into your house with some bad juju, if you will. And sometimes that stuff can come on you. It can, attack you, your children. You just have to have discernment about the people you bring into your house. And teach your children how to be set apart. So that's part of what this life is all about, is learning to be holy and set apart. And so the teaching your children Torah each week makes it pretty easy, because there's a lot of things that make you set apart.
Yep.
Seek ye first the kingdom. And so teach them to seek Yah first in all that they do. And so even the little things. And so do I believe I have to ask him every day, should I put my left foot in front of my right foot today? No. But you do ask him about the things going on in your life, and you ask for confirmation. Your children need to see you asking. They need to hear your confirmation stories. And I kind of digress too. I think in the workplace too, if you're a praying person, then sometimes people at work need to see you pray. There's nothing wrong with that. That's happened to me a couple of times in the last few weeks, dealing with a very difficult person They witnessed me and our general manager had to tackle something very difficult. We prayed about it. We had everybody in the office pray about it, and we turned that situation around. And the person was happy, and most importantly, we had to get paid, and he paid. And then we've needed people before, and literally this happened this week. So I was describing the person that I thought we needed in this role. And then literally a day later, this guy walks up randomly out of the blue and is exactly what I said. So, I mean, it was just like, man, our words are powerful. And anyway, so that was a good reminder for me. And it's important to when those things happen, to give him credit and to tell others about this intervention. So anyway, and I think that's true with our children, just everybody around us. It should be obvious to everybody that we're seeking him first.
Yeah.
Protect your family, be willing to lay down your life. And so, I mean, I think most men across the board, they got that one.
That's a father thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it even matters if you're Torah, Christian, atheist. Most men with a little bit of decency in them are going to do that.
Well, it's just that if you're a man,
you
will do that. Yeah.
Yeah. You got to lead your family out of Babylon, going back to being holy and set apart. Got to teach them to be different. And, we've been praying, for my children for years, and y'all's going to do mighty things in your family when you follow these. And this is something I pray for on my children, so I would recommend everybody do this prayer. Even if you got babies at home, start praying that they find a mate that is a complement to your family, a blessing to your family, that they find their own faith, and that they seek you with everything they've got. They believe your word over man's word, and they fall in love with your Torah, your feast, your things. And we want them to do that organically and naturally, not because we're forcing them to. Because, think about all the people we've known in our life where the families kind of forced them to be a certain way, and then they got independent and they're like, I'm out of here. And, usually that doesn't work. So that's how the Father works with us. He wants us to choose him. He wants us to desire that relationship, and we have to help our children do that. But pray for your kids every day that they'll do these things. And then I think we're going over to Jake.
Right. He sets the example, and he doesn't force us to follow his will. He lets you choose to follow him. So some of these will be duplicate just because Matt and I think very similarly about things. So hopefully there's some overlap. So this one we did talk about. Remember, you're raising adults, not children. So let's see. We kind of talked about this one. Discipline should come out of love. And so you can't react, but you have to respond as a righteous judge, seek out a matter, make sure you're not doing the... I always think of the Bill Cosby himself. I know you're not allowed to say that, but the Bill Cosby himself he says...
he was exonerated, by the way, I think.
Ooh.
Maybe. I think I heard that.
Maybe you're hearing what you want to hear.
I don't know. I don't know if I believe it, but there was something about that. So anyway, Bill Cosby.
Anyway.
One time I rode in Jake's car and never mind. Okay.
Anyway, but he talks about when the small child takes something from someone and then you take it back and then they're like, mine. And he goes, you go over and you hit the child and you say, just give it to her. Don't you hear her yelling? Because they want quiet, not justice. So don't be like that.
Yeah.
That is how you want to react sometimes. But no, seek out the matter, find out, let your children see you being a righteous judge about things, or they'll grow up thinking you unfairly judged that act, got me in trouble for, you yelled at me. It wasn't even my fault. And now they don't trust you. So it's important to seek out the matter. Yeah. So you're one with your wife, and as such, mom always comes first. That being, let your children know that your mom, their mom, your wife is first in your book, not them. A lot of people want their children to be first, and that's out of the order that Yah put it in. The wife is first in the husband's life. So after Yah, of course, that's kind of given. But and then recognize that she'll need a night off once in a while. So help her to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't have the attitude of like, woman, you're going to serve me and the supper's going to be on the table when I come home off the car. And yeah, sometimes you got to get off your butt, dude, and do something. If you're, you can't expect her to be your personal slave, personal servant. So,
yep. And that kind of goes in, I don't know if I'm going to get into it later, but having your kids do work around the house, help your mom out, don't just be causing messes for her to pick up. She's not your maid, that kind of thing. And sometimes I don't think it's a bad thing if dad comes home from working all day, puts his feet up and says, okay, you need to run the vacuum, and I'll help you by lifting my feet when you come by.
Yeah.
Because I've done work today and I'm providing for you. You need to learn to work also. And so things like that. I mean, I'm not saying to sit around, but teach your kids a good work ethic. And then at that point, you're kind of more of a delegator of things going on in the home. And that's kind of a process.
Yeah, you might have to make chore list and jobs, and that does work. Right. Checklist, and those are great disciplines for children to learn. And that's the deal. When you teach them that, you're not just teaching them to be kind and compassionate, and to not view women in a bad light or bad role, but you're also teaching them an inner discipline and procedures of how to organize themselves later in life, because many of us function in workplaces where there's maybe lots of demands, lots of requests, lots of things flying at you, from phone calls to emails to people in your face to crises and fires that you're putting out. Maybe that's just my life. And you have to make lists sometimes and go, okay, what do I got to do today? I got to do this, 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 and this. And that kind of thing is part of what you're doing, is you're developing that inner discipline in a child.
Yeah. And the idea that, you may not want to do it. You have to do it though.
Yeah.
And because when you grow up, you're going to have to do a lot of stuff you don't want to do. Yeah. And so instill that in them early.
Yeah.
All right. Self-control is the most important skill your kids can learn. Pulling that from Titus 2:6. So yeah, if you have no self-control, none of this other stuff we're talking about happens very well. So because it just doesn't. I think that's kind of an obvious one.
Yeah, it's like all those videos I make of the people that have really bad ADD, and they're like, yeah, I'm going to go work on this thing in the garage. And they go out in the garage and they're like, oh, the door hinge is kind of crazy. And then next thing you know, they're like taking the door off. and then while they're taking the door off, then they go to the sander and they're going to sand the door down. Well, the sander's out of paper or something. So then they go to Home Depot and buy a new sander. I mean, like they do all of these crazy things and they don't have anything done. And there's like this trail of destruction behind them.
Right. So, patience is a virtue. Apply it to number 2, which is the discipline and don't react. You can push your kids, but they will be ready for things in their own time. So yeah, kind of like we've been saying, it's good to push your kids, but have realistic expectations.
Like they should read at 2 months. I think that's pretty realistic.
Right.
Yeah.
So if your kids aren't reading by 2 months,
yeah,
see the discipline.
That's
section.
right. If they're not able to run a full sprint at month 3, then you've done something wrong. Clearly.
Exactly. You're a terrible parent.
Yes.
Matt talked about this. Consistency is key. And that kind of goes along with the next one. Don't expect what you aren't willing to inspect. So that's a follow-through situation. So if I am going to tell my kids to clean their room, but I'm not going to go check, then they don't really have to clean their room. And then, yes, as the man, you are the first line of accountability when things go wrong. Since you're the head and, the father works on headship. And so you as the head of the household, if something goes bad, it's your responsibility. It's your wife's side of it is she can bring ideas to the table, and your decision to take her advice or not leads your family a certain way. And now if that family leads into a ditch because you chose whichever thing you chose, that's on you. So I think that's part of that responsibility of being the head.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, go ahead and scroll down a little. Oh, yeah. So there's a song by Mark Schultz. He's a normie Christian music singer. It's Do You Even Know Me Anymore? And it's about just learn the lesson from that song. Go look it up, learn the lesson from the song. It's basically a father and mother who have kind of grown apart, and it's the wife is saying, do you even know who I am, to the father, so to the husband. So it's, as a father, don't not know who your wife is. Make it a point to date your wife. Let's see.
It's not a cats in the cradle kind of situation in that song.
No silver spoons.
Okay.
No little boy blues or dogs in the moon.
But there's a lot of good advice in that song.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you don't want to end up like that for sure.
I might be thinking of a different song. Anyway, yeah, don't run away with a spoon. That's very important. Discipline comes from the word disciple, and we're told to go make disciples. So don't hold that away from your children. That's a blessing to your children. So I have here a goofy, quote unquote, goofy man is not a well-respected man. So I'm kind of pulling that from Proverbs 22:15. So that isn't to say you can't be funny and goof around, but if that's all you do all the time, then you're not garnering respect. Seek first the kingdom of Yah. We kind of talked about that. Matt had the same one, Matthew 6:33. Matt agree on that.
Yeah.
2 out of 3 Matts.
That's right. They would agree.
Yeah. So we're all broken, and in some ways carry the sins of our fathers with us. Recognize those areas, address them in yourself. Addressing them in yourself will have lasting effects. Work to cut ties with the generational curses. We kind of talk about this too. Recognize where that comes from. I think this is the generational curses, I think, is the sins of the father. Because my father, maybe we can put it in a way like, because my father wasn't one to follow Torah, now I'm not one who follows Torah. So I inherently absorb those sins and start sinning in a way that is counter to Torah, just because my father did, and that's how I grew up. So recognize that. Try to get away from it. even when you think you can't do it, you can. Yeah. So this is especially for new parents at each stage is trying, and that's a little engine that could make sure you chew all the way up the hill.
Well, and even then that comes to so many areas. So many areas as a man, you can't listen to that inner quit voice sometimes, and sometimes everything inside you is like quit. But we have to power through that and learn to ignore that and be tougher than that. And sometimes it really sucks being an adult, being a man, and being the bad guy, and that's sometimes at work too. Sometimes you have to tell the truth. And that kind of makes you the bad guy in some people's mind. Some people just want to be Mr. Happy, Mr. Party, Mr. Good, but it kind of goes back even to what you're saying on the goofy. There are times when we just have to be real and raw and tell it like it is, because that's what somebody needs to hear. And so people, our children, they don't benefit if we tell them lies. But I also think, use your head, be smart about it with children. You can't tell your child 3-4 years old and they draw you a picture and you're like, that's crap. What is that? That I don't look anything like that. That's soul crushing, don't
Right.
be a soul crusher.
Right. Dream stealer.
That's right. So, there are certain things that, yes, we know that that's the best they can do, and it may not be amazing. But also, especially as they get older, sometimes, if they get a little cocky, sometimes you kind of have to help set them in place, and much better for you to do it than somebody bigger and stronger knocking them down kind of thing, for real.
Yeah. This is mainly for like new parents. Everything gets easier after 2 months. So for me, that, both of our kids, that line was 2 months. After that, it was like, okay, we got this now.
Yeah, I'd say at the beginning, that is pretty rough when they can't sleep, they cry, they poop, they can't tell you what's wrong, and you're just like, I don't know.
You can't move them the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, Yahweh entrusted you with this child. He will equip you to provide, so call on him often. Yeah, so we're the parents, but really we're just
dust in the wind.
We're just holding on to him for Yah. We're just, we got a job to do and it's, the job Yah gave us. Yeah, so pray with your children and in front of your children. Matt kind of talked about this one. They're always watching you. It's your chance to be a great influence. Every challenge is an opportunity. Yeah, you're always, whatever you're doing is influencing what they're seeing and how they may not, just be considerate that how they take what you're doing and what you're saying may not be how you mean it, but consider how they're receiving it also.
And sometimes that's where you listen to your wife, because you may not be understanding what you're saying, and you're mad or you're trying to make this point. And sometimes we can go on and be repetitive maybe, or aggressive, and we don't even realize what we're doing. And and sometimes we need to be like, hold up, slow down.
Yeah. Like, I remember one time I was trying to do a math lesson with the kids, and the math lesson was, hey, quit tipping in your stool, and then I'll show you why tipping in the stool is bad. And so it involved Bigfoot sitting on a tiny stool and the forces going into the legs. And it's like, they didn't get any of that. They remember that it was fun, but it was a little over their heads.
Yeah, it's easy to do.
Okay. Your family unit is a team assembled by Yah to face any challenge. Don't let the team be fractured from within, and you'll be able to handle the tests that come your way. So we use this a lot at our house. Hey, we're a team. We're together. If everything else goes to crap, forget that. We got us, you know? And so, you know, team and camaraderie and helping each other, it builds all that stuff up. Okay, let your kids see you standing up for what's right, even if you're the only one. Proverbs 25:26. So, yeah, Matt kind of talked about this a little bit too, about when you have to confront someone or be careful who you're letting into your house, that kind of thing. And as your kids get older, you know, and you're pointing out things are happening in the world, we don't do any of that. Even if we're the only ones, this is not right to do, that kind of thing.
Even if they put that pallet of bricks right in front of you, you don't have to pick it up and throw it at somebody.
Right. If everyone else in the neighborhood is putting up a Christmas tree, you don't have to.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. I like the bricks thing too. That's good. Mercy is not weakness. Violence is not always wrong. And a wise man knows how and when to apply both. So a lot of people say, well, violence is never the answer. Okay, if someone breaks into my house and tries to kill one of my family, violence is the answer to that. And that's just the truth.
We're just going to pray for them.
Yeah. You try that.
I'm going to get on my hands and knees and bow my head down and pray.
Right.
Not that it's not bad to pray, but also y'all gave us a brain and
reason,
gave us some ability. And we are supposed to protect and do what's necessary. And and let's face it, there are a lot of people in this world that the world would be better off maybe had they gotten punched in the nose a couple of times somewhere along the way, because they're bullies. And so, there's some people you got to stand up to that just are so belligerent, that are just like so trying to intimidate. And so many times I find out when you stand up to them, they back down and then they cower and cry to the next person because you scared them and you bullied them. And, that's been my experience with the bullies and as fathers, the bullying thing is such a deal. You hear about it so much on the news. And, one time I was out and about somewhere, and I think I was at a 7-Eleven gas station, something. And this kid came up to me and he had this anti-bullying program. And, and he was very excited about it. And I was like, so what is this program? And he told me, and I went, you know what? I used to be a school teacher for years. And there were times when I told these kids, hey, you're just going to have to hit that kid in the face and you're going to get in trouble. And if I see it, you're going to get in trouble, but that kid's not going to hit you again. And so you'll win a moral victory there, but it may cost you something. And I said, I told him, I said, I think that most of the bullying problem would be solved if we taught kids how to fight back.
Yeah.
And stop it. And boy, he did not like anything I said. He was like, why did I ask this guy anything? He's like, all right, well, have a great day, sir. And he's just backing away. Like, I don't know. It's funny. But I do remember, especially, I taught around a lot of ladies, and they didn't understand that concept very much. And they had a hard time with that, but I believe that to be true. And I taught my own children, when there was somebody, just bothering them, and especially trying to do physical violence or whatever against them, you don't just sit and take it. You don't get whipped every day. That's not the answer. And so you have to defend yourself, and you kind of have to learn to defend yourself. And as a man, hopefully, you can give your child some pointers, some advice, and help them figure it out. And they will be stronger because of it.
Right. And then consider, would younger me have older me as his role model? So would you have been a role model to younger you? And so maybe keep that in mind. And
yeah, that's real good advice.
And because if you wouldn't want to hear from you, that should tell you something.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good.
So
Wow.
I think that's our
I think we did it.
how to pretend you're actually a good father lesson.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty good. Oh, there we are, full screen
Hey,
again.
full screen.
Hopefully the video is not super delayed. Anyway, well, those are, I think, good tips for fathers, good advice. Please put in comments if there are things that we left out.
That's right.
And maybe some of your own experiences and something good about Father's Day. Please put encouraging notes about Father's Day, because ultimately we have a awesome Heavenly Father who knows how to give great gifts to us and is generous and kind. He is a protector, and he is the ultimate protector. In fact, vengeance is his. And he's coming back thankfully to set it all right. And if you don't know him, it's time you know him. It's time you get to know him and have a relationship with him.
That's right. And yeah, we're not saying that we always succeed in all these points we've made, but you want to reach for something a little higher than where you are, so you can do a little better. So these are just things that we've found that should lead us in the right direction as fathers. So
yeah, no, I think that that is good, and we're not claiming to be experts or have it all figured out, but we just do the best we can. And if you're like me, I've kind of raised my children, and now they're all in their 20s and now raising their own families. And it's something that I love watching on this side of things is a grandparent, which I like to. I'm kind of a baby at the grandparent thing so far, but just getting started in it. But it is such a beautiful thing to witness your child fall in love with this grandchild, and in these grandchildren, in so many ways they remind you of their parent when they were little. And so that's a whole surreal moment. You kind of go back in time with them, but just a beautiful thing to witness them falling in love with their new baby, because it's really amazing, really powerful, and it helps you see the way the Father sees us. So, when he looks down on us, the love and the care that he has for us and the concern he has for us is, just like the love these children, the way they see their own children, the way you see your children and grandchildren. And, those are the lessons we learned, because it's not just this earthly relationship with our children, but it's the vertical relationship that we need to see how we fit in with our Heavenly Father, and how our disobedience and, just like these things we've talked about in our children, so many times as a parent, there are these moments that come along where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so mad about this kid, but that's exactly what I do to God.
yeah.
And it's really humbling, and we have to be willing to learn our spiritual lessons about ourselves in that relationship with our real Heavenly Father, and that will help us be better parents.
Yeah, your kids can be a good mirror of that you can learn from.
Mm-hmm. Especially when they're young. Sometimes there's certain ages and certain stages in their life where maybe they have certain characteristics that either come from you or come from your wife, and you start recognizing those. And especially if it's a bad characteristic, you're like, oh my gosh, I did that. And now, anyway, now on the other side of it, it's funny now when I start saying something, usually corny kind of dad joke, and my boys are like, that's exactly what I was about to say. I'm like, yeah. So,
yeah.
Anyway, we hope you have a great Father's Day.
Yeah, check out our short video we got coming out.
Yeah.
You guys will like that. hopefully.
Yeah, we give some good biblical advice from
That's right.
Leviticus.
Straight from the Torah.
So hopefully it doesn't get yanked off the internet by the censors. So,
but
we'll see.
We know how that goes.
Yeah.
So,
but we appreciate you liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing.
Yep.
Thank you so much for all of the folks that consistently show up in the chat with us week after week, have comments, and we interact with people from all over the world in that chat. And so that's kind of fun to see that interaction. We especially appreciate our friend in the UK and Christine and Mike and Debbie as well. And we appreciate seeing everybody in there and the encouraging words that they have to say.
Right. So if you're new to the channel, this is the first time you've seen us, go check out sabbathlounge.com for lots of other similar videos about all kinds of Torah topics and get all your fix there.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is Matt and Jake
signing out.